Thank you all for being here and listening to our presentation. I'll be sitting here with slight nervousness, so I'm just gonna say it right now, so I'm not nervous about it anymore. My camera keeps cutting out at the worst times, so like memorize my situation, and like maybe when I'm talking it'll be a bit of this, and I might cut in and out on video. So I'm sorry about that. But the context of this presentation and why Alan, Garth, and I are kind of nicely connected is because all of us have realized at kind of various points in our journeys that we're really passionate about the notion of co-creation and the notion of active problem solving. And so the friendship's actually been quite interesting for that reason, because I've realized that at various points we've all kind of influenced each other's thinking in really nice ways. And that's a nice byproduct of being somebody that's inclined to value co-creation, is you get a lot of good insight. So that really struck me in putting together this presentation. When we've delivered a version of it once before, and this is the point where last time I talked about the dark side of co-creation, which is sometimes some very unfortunate slides, but Alan has since cleaned up his act, so his his slides are much better. So I'm going to, speaking of which, start screen sharing. We're all gonna kind of introduce ourselves at the very beginning in the context of oh no, hold on.
So many icons.
Yeah, it's not a good look, eh? That's how my desk looks, actually. That's very very fitting. So I will start. I'm Arianna. Hello, everybody. I'm the CEO of a company called Matchbox Virtual Media, and we produce virtual events. And our story actually of getting into this space is very relevant to the context of this particular conversation, because previously I was running a digital publication and online community for leaders of associations. And what I was noticing, because we would have community conversations, we would have sometimes Zoom meetings where, masterminds where people would come together. And what I was realizing is that there were a lot of people who were independently experiencing very similar challenges within their own contexts. And there were all these amazing stories, again, I was hearing kind of in silos, about ways to overcome those challenges. And, there were these moments in time when I would bring together, let's say, a mastermind group of 10 people, say, and somebody would bring a challenge that they were facing, and then the group was collectively workshopping solutions to that challenge. And so one of those times, I hit the record button on it, and with permission, and was listening back, and I realized I opened up a Word document and I started writing problems identified, solutions identified. And I realized that after that 1 hour, serendipitous interaction between this group of people, I had 6 pages of these like really incredible notes. And sometimes somebody would just say an offhand comment, which was a story to kind of follow, and realize that there was this whole experience that they were having in their own context that they didn't even realize would be valuable to the larger group. And so, that kind of sparked this general obsession for that is the honest word for it, of collective knowledge, and the ways in which you can meaningfully bring a group together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. And so in my situation, my job was to grow a digital publication, grow an online community. And so this was great, but it wasn't very scalable. These masterminds were groups of 10 with me taking notes after every one. And so this evolution of thought kind of led to a virtual conference, pre-COVID, as you see, 2017. And this was about kind of expanding the group of people who could be bringing their insights into the conversation. So all of the sessions were recorded as discussions, and we were purposely looking for people who would come at the same questions from different angles, because it encouraged divergent thinking. And then the real magic was in a chat that was running alongside. And over time, we developed all these practices in that chat to encourage meaningful dialogue. And at the end, we would have, literally thousands of chat messages in there. And when we combed through them, we really saw that there was so much insight being shared. People simultaneously looking up relevant articles and putting them in, talking about their own example, asking meaningful questions that sparked, whole other dialogues. So that kind of realizing that this feedback loop of what happens when what you can do when you bring a group of people together in this way eventually had me realizing I wanted to give that a go with different communities as well. So at that point, launched Matchbox, and then one of the advantages of the last few years was the ability to kind of test out and prototype over time different ways of meaningfully capturing that collective knowledge. So that has been my journey in a nutshell as to why this is a passionate topic. So Garth, why is it a passionate topic for you? And can you tell me when to switch slides?
Yes, hi everybody, what's up? You can switch slides. So this idea of I'm going to skip a couple of these slides, but the idea of the next generation association focusing on solving came to me over a little bit of time. So I think of this as kind of situation, opportunity, and why, how, what, and that's kind of how I'll frame all of this. So let's go to the next slide. So we'll talk about the situation, if you will. That spawned this for me. I started thinking about associations and their evolution over time from the mid 1950s, believe it or not, up until where we're at today. And essentially, the summary of this slide is that we have become really good at product proliferation. So books, magazines, webinars, research, newsletters, trade shows, education sessions, all kinds of stuff. And let's go to the next slide. We tend to categorize a lot of that stuff into three categories. When we look at our websites and how we arrange, sometimes our website navigation is around Lead Learning Connect. Oftentimes our mission statements have Lead Learning Connect in them. And but that Lead Learning Connect kind of spawns the stuff, right? So whether it's volunteer opportunities, or whether it's new learning methodologies, new ways of connecting with audiences, whether it's business partner audiences through directories, old-fashioned yellow pages, right? Or whether it's, newfangled ways of connecting. And when I've worked with 5 associations directly and indirectly with, dozens, if not hundreds more. And when you talk to members about why they want to be in an association, why they want to join an association, they might use the words lead, learn, and connect, but when you dive deeper, they actually want to do something else. And let's go to the next slide.
Yes, sir.
And that is the opportunity that we'll be talking about. So let's flip to the next one here. The opportunity is that they do these things because they want to solve. So there are a lot of different ways to think about solving. So it's a verb, right? It's also a noun like solution, right? Or it can be a descriptor like I want to be a better problem solver. So when I think about this opportunity, I think about these 3 verbs, lead, learn, and connect, that our associations have kind of been built around. And I think about building our associations around an additional verb, not to discount or get rid of lead, learn, and connect, but I think about building our associations around the verb solve. And what kind of products, services, experiences might we build that are quite different if we focus on this verb? Let's go to the next slide. So that leads me to a simple why, how, what. So I think of the why as that solving is core to anyone individual's professional development, regardless of what profession they're in. And how we might build solving is through open and collaborative innovation. And by doing that together, we can build better solutions for our own professions and our own industries, and also individually become and collectively become better problem solvers. So what do we do about it? Well, as associations, we can design and run solving experiences for members as a core function, just like Lead, Learn, and Connect. And so now I want to give you a very specific example of how we've turned this into a product at AHA, American Animal Hospital Association. So let's flip forward. And for lack of a better word, AHA is calling our product the Solve product. And this is how we are kind of pitching it out in the world. Let's go to the next slide. We're pitching it in a Simon Sinek why, how, what. You're seeing the actual pitch to sponsors and members here. So let's go forward. The why of Solve is that we are creating better solutions and solvers for everyone. So it's very magnanimous of us, correct? Let's go on to the what. Our what is we are building an innovation community because the crowd has ideas that can change the world. And our how, our what is that we are bringing, because we are the American Animal Hospital Association, we are bringing pet owners and veterinary practitioners together. We are connecting them to very, very specific and defined challenges. Our first challenge is going to be around reducing the friction of purchasing pet health insurance to increase accessibility to pet health care. And we are doing that on an open innovation management platform. So let's dive into one quick detail on that what.
Oh.
So let's click forward. Sorry, click forward. Yep, forward again. We're gonna flip through this. So we are joining onto a platform where we are bringing 30,000 problem solvers together, as well as our members, 45,000 members, on what is known as a collaboration platform to build these innovation solutions. Let's click forward. And our partner, just so that it's not sounds like it's confidential, is IdeaScale, ideascale.com. If anybody wants to think about turning open innovation into a product of your association, please give me a shout and I'll hook you up with the right folks at IdeaScale. But together we are working with IdeaScale and we're going to launch a branded, AHA branded platform, bringing their 30,000 open innovation consumers and our veterinary practitioners to a challenge. And today we have pitched this to a variety of sponsors and we have 3 challenges lined up over the next 9 months. And we're a small association. It's costing us probably $20,000 to $25,000 and we have about $150,000 in sponsorships. And we're going to be creating a whole host of really cool solutions that get to be given back to not only the sponsors, but also our community at large on these challenges. So one of the challenges that IdeaScale has run, let's go to the next slide, thank you. So IdeaScale as a partner, just so you know, they're very flexible. They've run internal challenges for NASA. They run product development challenges for Taco Bell and all kinds of stuff. They even ran a challenge for health insurance. And that health insurance challenge generated 60 ideas, 10 high potential, and a ton of resources around discussion and resource sharing from their crowd and their customer platform. So we're essentially just doing a wash, rinse, repeat of what IdeaScale does very well, but within the context of our community and the needs within pet healthcare, and figuring out how to generate solutions, generate better problem solvers, and actually make it not just financially sustainable, but lucrative. And I think that's the end of my pitch for why we should become a better problem solvers. Oh yeah, and that's just the pitch to our sponsors about what they get, if you will, when they sponsor one of our solving challenges.
So I have like 3 slides and Garth has like 80 slides. So
sorry,
our labor here is all off. Alan.
Well, thank you. And I always laugh, like we did this in person and I laughed. Garth refers to himself as a small association. And then the slide that's up on the screen says 45,000 members. And I'm like, whew, what the heck does that make me? Because I've got 1,500 members. So my journey is a little different in that I went from an attendee to an evangelist of this format. And it all went through those surge events that Arianna talked about a little earlier. So the first one of those events, my then boss was a presenter and I got kind of roped into attending, and almost instantly the chat was going crazy and I was seeing all these fantastic ideas that were playing off of what the presenter was talking about. And one of the things that's always driven me crazy, Arianna, if I could have the next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
You know, if you've been to any kind of event, you have seen this. You know, it's the person up on the stage telling you everything they know because they're the expert, and you should listen to them. And I think, you know, traditionally this made a lot of sense because it used to be that, you know, the world was pretty stagnant, and if somebody did something for a long time, they became an expert, and getting their expert knowledge had a lot of value. As we all know, like, the world doesn't work like that anymore. The world now moves incredibly fast. Things are changing constantly. And so what really has the potential to provide value to folks is less this expert, you know, speaking at us, and more collaboration. So if I could have a slide, please. So to me, we can do this better together, right? Like, the one person talking to us is great, but if you can have a community of folks that come together and share what they're seeing, these modern problems can get solved a lot better, because in reality, these problems pop up and they're very complicated. And the best way to fix a complicated problem is to take a number of different approaches. And getting people together to share those is really, really powerful. And so if you could give me the next slide there. You know, this is kind of my slide to document that, you know, the old way, you draw this thing and it would, you know, be the source of knowledge for a long time. But then things got moving a little faster. So next slide, please. So over time, we came up with, Arianna introduced me to this, this methodology of a design session. And the basic concept here, and, you know, Garth was talking about his, you know, Solve website and allowing these, you know, people from all over the country to contribute to solving a problem. Being a much smaller organization, we used kind of a more labor intensive but more interactive format. And so we do this thing called a design session. The basic concept is it's an hour long and it's divided into 4 quarters. Your first quarter is really just, you know, outlining what the problem is and talking about what you're trying to solve. We then spend the second quarter, everybody individually throwing ideas out. And typically we've done this using a Google Doc. And so it would have a few columns. The first column, you'd put your name in, super easy. The second column, you would put whatever your idea was. And then we have a third column, and it's called yes and. And the yes and allows people to look at other people's ideas and either say, oh yeah, I have that, I agree, I thought of that as well. Or, ooh, I like that, and you could tweak it a little bit this way or that way. And so we spent about, you know, 15 minutes doing that. And then we move into a group work. And so during the group work, you would take a couple of these ideas that percolated up, and you'll have a small group come together and refine it. You know, as Arianna said, it's in, you do Zoom rooms, you put them in a room, they still have the Google Doc, they work on it, and they refine it, and they come up with, you know, an idea that can be implemented. The last part is just a group presentation. And so at the end, each group comes up, they tell you what they came up with, kind of share any, you know, ahas they had in their little discussion. And since everything is in this Google Doc, at the end of the day, you've got an already made resource that you can then share out with people who might not have been able to attend. So next slide, please. The thing that was really cool to me, if you look at this chart, it is for our continuing education for CPAs, you have to ask, for an online class, you have to ask a question to verify people are there. So we use that as a function to gauge how people were feeling throughout the process. And so at the top, you see the different colors for the 4 steps in the process. And if you look, you can see there's some, you know, as we were introducing this and during some of the group work, there was some anxiety and some nervousness. We had a little bit of confusion during the solo part. You know, the first time you do this, it is a little weird. But as you look, The one that I really like is let's see, the third one over. It says a part of, and the rest of that is a part of something bigger than myself. And as you look at that, it goes through the stages, that just grew. And so the attendees through the event had a bigger feeling of being a part of something bigger than themselves. I think it's also cool that, the fun and the belonging scored really high because folks, felt like they were a part of something and they were able to work together. The last thing I'll add is we did this a few times, just our members, just as something to kind of, get them some continuing ed credit and to be somewhat of a networking event. As we're moving forward into this year, we're working with a couple of sponsors who are going to sponsor our sessions. And what they're doing, in addition to, just giving us some money, we're working with them to come up with whatever the problem is. And so it really integrates them into the process. And then for our members, they get access to somebody in a different way. These vendors, typically you would, have a vendor sell to you. And what we're planning for this is to have the vendor be somebody that you're working with on solving a problem. And that'll be a better introduction to them rather than just having them sell you something. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Arianna, because I think the next slide is yours.
Yeah, I am operating under the assumption we have 3 minutes, so I'm gonna tie this last story into a takeaway. But this one of the things I've been, when I realized we had 3 minutes left, one of the things I was like racking my brain about is like, what's an easy, tangible thing that we can suggest to try this all out. And so my suggestion is actually going to tie with this specific story, because I want to share a story of how these design sessions actually led to a really meaningful outcome. And so my suggestion is going to be try out a format like this with your team, with your fellow employees, because for us, it's had really transformative effects. And this was in large part, this obsession with collective knowledge. My team have been my test subjects over the years. And so this format really came out of a meeting where we had the team together, and I really didn't want to just talk for 25 minutes. The topic was virtual networking, and I was talking to the team about our future of experimenting with different ways of interacting, of facilitating meaningful connections. And so instead of just talking for 25 minutes, I created the table that Alan was talking about and had the team writing in their ideas simultaneously into the document. And I was just so struck by how many really insightful ideas were there. Actually, people on the team, I realized in these that some were very quiet, but they were so thoughtful, and actually led to a few people on the team getting promoted over time. It was just such a different mode for them to interact. But at any rate, so our one of these design sessions, I forgot like my next logical step in the story. One of these design sessions, I wish I could remember the challenge that created it, or that articulated it, but essentially, we were experiencing a team that was growing rapidly because we're in the virtual event space, and these teams that were independently solving for very similar things in different types of events. And so because of we had this big knowledge transfer question, as this team over here was discovering this like really cool tool to use for this specific outcome, and this team here discovered that if they write something specific in a chat, it triggers a whole conversation. And so this is how so that the design sessions were really about the cross-pollination of those ideas. And in one of those meetings, because the knowledge transfer question was one that I posed to the team, in one of those meetings, design sessions, an idea evolved for this notion of what we now call the Matchbox kitchen, which was essentially a place to house recipes for achieving certain experiences or sessions. And so the team got really excited. This was something we had kind of that had surfaced together in one of these design sessions. And then we started, the yes anding kind of went from there, and our creative team jumped into it. And we started building these recipes for specific sessions. And, first our plan was create a few recipes, but we realized that, over time, just seeing how many things were possible in the virtual space, it escalated quickly, I will say. And then notion of cookbooks, and then eventually notion of a whole kitchen. And so originally the vision of the Matchbox kitchen tool was going to be internal. This was a training mechanic, but we realized that it was something that was very valuable and relevant for our clients. And so have started to use it actually as a tool in our practice, and have realized also, and this is kind of the future where the kitchen is going, is that that we realized that over time we were creating a lot of resources that were for a specific event, to solve a specific problem, but that it actually had really relevant applications more globally for that same use case, because others are hosting similar events. And so we've started to use it as a general repository of, things like tips for attendees who are participating in a problem-solving event, or tips for attendees who are participating in a vendor showcase, for example. So yeah, the point is, this is something is a big part of our future actually, and it was something that emerged very organically within the collective knowledge of our team. And when I think of the individuals that contributed to making it what it is, it's dozens and dozens of people at that point. So my tangible takeaway is absolutely to practice this meta process with your own team, and you'll really be surprised at the amazing insights that are at every corner. There's a recipe for a design session, which I'd be happy to share with anyone. My username to my Zoom was Garth's Overlord, and I'd forgotten to change it. And then right before we hit go on the presentation, I was like, oh, it's actually pretty impractical. You won't be able to find me on LinkedIn as Garth's Overlord. One day, maybe. But we're out of time. Alan and Garth, would you like some parting words, some drop the mic words?
I'm going to share that I think it is cool. As you talked about the kitchen, how that is a perfect example both of the process and then of a group having built something that is better than any one person could have built. And again, looking back at those design sessions, the one that resonated most with me was the one where we talked about giving back and ways that we could have a virtual event and then do something to help local charities that might have been facing struggle during COVID. And that was just an awesome, it was a group of 15, 20 people, and over the course of an hour we came up with a lot of great ideas that I think eventually were implemented as folks were having events and looking for ways to give back. And so it's very powerful.
Well, to that point, Alan, I was talking to a group. They're called Work on Climate, and they have this community of volunteers who are really, really engaged. Their community is 6,000 people, and they did no active marketing, like it was organic growth, basically. And there's such a strong connection to the cause. And so the leadership team is having to solve for all of these big questions of like one of their missions is to create 30 million jobs in the climate space. Like that's huge, right? And so these tiny groups that are like, how are we going to achieve that? And so actually my suggestion was, when you come out with your strategic plan, do some solve session, like bring your community to answer some of those questions, because in their particular case, they have so much relevant expertise within that group of 6,000. So super over time. Garth, did you want to say one more thing?
I know. You know what? While we're over time, it seems like nobody's signing off. So we can go an extra couple minutes because obviously you guys have some great thoughts, and it looks like Garth's ready to say something. So.
I'll say two things. One is to kind of recap something I said earlier. Lead, learn, and connect are three very powerful verbs. And just reflect on, go look at 100 different associations' websites, and you will see that we build our products and our services and experiences around those three verbs. And we've been doing it for a long time, and that's how we've been living and thriving. So whether it's solve or something else, think about what it might mean to be building a product line, a service line, an experience line around that verb, not accidentally, but purposefully. So my example today around finding an innovation platform and building that out as a place where solving experiences and solutions can be generated, that's a real life experience, right? Another example of one are IT hackathons. Those are solving experiences. There is no reason you can't take the concept of an IT hackathon. In fact, you can go find these out on the web. Go take the idea of a hackathon and build it as a digital or an in-person event. And all of a sudden your event takes on a different shape. It's not a bunch of people standing in a room talking at you from a pulpit, right? You are part of an experience where you're building a solution together. And that's what you pay for, is the experience of building the solution, learning how to become a better problem solver, running those experiences for your own organization, and then also getting access to all the solutions. I mean, what better way to develop professionally? So the point here, at least the utopia in my mind, is we all have an opportunity to take a verb like solve and make it ours, and not just let it happen accidentally. So that's my concept.
So Garth, since we're getting it, seems like we're getting an encore. So let me throw a question back to you, because you're spearheading this new product of Solve, and this is something I know you've been passionate about for years. So I'm curious, in this whole process of doing that, what you found to be unexpectedly challenging and unexpectedly simple.
The challenge is doing this very deliberately and planning for it. So, but once you do that, the simple part is you can wash, rinse, and repeat it. So think about 15, 20 years ago when webinars got started up. It was, you saw it, the traction around webinars in associations was it was a rough start. Right? It was difficult, new technology, new way of communicating, new. But then now we're wash, rinse, and repeat on webinars, and it's part of our normal day and our DNA. So the simple part of this is it sounds like it's hard to build an event around a hackathon or to build an open innovation community and bring it on. And yes, that's hard. But I tell you, once you get practiced in it, it becomes part of our DNA, and it can and it should. I believe that.
So it's an interesting time, and I know, in Garth, in your particular case, it's a virtual. This is something you're doing virtually, and I'm certainly biased to the virtual as well, because it's the world that I know. But in my particular case, with Matchbox, our first year, it was very hard to try and convince people to try something new, right? The associations, for lots of reasons, right? It's a heavy undertaking. There's a lot of unknowns, but also there's a lot of education of all of the stakeholders of what it means to interact and what the rules are in that interaction. You know, I remember one of our first clients that we worked with, for instance, when we started working with them, their conference calls were, their council meetings were conference calls. So it was 20 people that were all on the same call, probably not very engaged. And so we started working with them on Zoom, and they eventually, slowly, they saw the value of being on camera together. And now, of course, fast forward a few years, and everybody knows how to use Zoom. So it strikes me, for those that they're out there who have read the book, Crossing the Chasm, kind of looking at the adoption curve, one of the things that differentiates between continuous and discontinuous innovation, where discontinuous it's such a huge leap to actually try this new thing because it requires completely different systems and completely different education for those who are using it, whereas continuous innovation is kind of the next step into something that's already there. And so it strikes me actually that it's a really good time to introduce something like this into the world, because we've all, it sort of got upgraded. These types of interactions kind of got upgraded into continuous innovation.
Well, I think both of you were talking about, a lot of the virtual and the tools we have here. But for me, like what made a lot of this easy to do was knowing my members and knowing a few of them that this would just like light them up, and having them bring them on early into the process and engage with them and say, hey, here's how this is going to work. Here's an example of it. Really makes the community building and all of that a lot easier. The other thought that I had was that, as we do these things differently, kind of the opposite of what I just said, sometimes you're going to find these folks that have never engaged before, but the new methodology that you're allowing them to use just resonates with them. And so we did an event pre-COVID called CPA Convene, and we brought CPAs from all over the country together to have these conversations about issues that were, facing the profession. And as we started it, the concept was very similar to Surge, where it was pre-recorded conversations, and then we, were kind of counting on the chat to drive the events. And we were just blown away. I mean, the number of comments was just staggering to us. It took days to like shuffle through it afterwards. And then the biggest part for me, and I always get emotional about this, but like we held a second event like shortly after COVID started, when we were all struggling with, how do we reconnect with people, and how do we, the big question for us was like, how do we as CPAs, move forward and navigate this, rapidly changing, completely different world. And through that, like our chat became amazingly personal. We had a person that was in the chat that had lost a family member, and they shared that in the chat. And I think there were probably almost every person that was attending, shared the condolences with this person. And when we started, I remember that morning, being a little apprehensive and not knowing, how this event was going to go. And then by the end, it was like this was a life-changing event for people. And so as we, enter some of these paths, recognize that as associations, we have this amazing power that we can, change the lives of our members and others. And don't be afraid to use that and try new things to do more of that.
So I'm going to double down on that one with like an exploding opportunity that we've found at AHA by focusing on Solve. We have taken that open innovation platform with IdeaScale and the concept of using that internally with our members and business partners to an ecosystem level. And we created something, we just had a name, Veterinary Visionaries, and we invited the other associations in our ecosystem to work on a global challenge in our industry. And we now have 50 associations in a very fragmented industry. We have 50 associations that are all going to market the same challenge to all of our collective membership to come work on a mental health challenge, because unfortunately veterinarians and practitioners have the highest suicide rate of any profession. So this is, to Alan's point, it can be very individual, personal, but it can also be a global personal thing, if you want to call it that. It sounds like an oxymoron. But this idea of solving in our industry has resonated because we're going to defragment how all of these disparate associations approach a common problem. And we're bringing our collective members together and solving together on an issue that is incredibly important and poignant to all of us. And that is getting separate sponsorship. We have $200,000 in sponsorship to support this community, this broad community effort. And the platform literally isn't costing us $20,000. So it's not about the money, it's about the support. And now we have this very sustainable way of working together within our ecosystem that did not exist literally 6 months ago.
Now, Alan's story. So we were working with them on this event, and I couldn't be there when it was happening, and I was hearing all this buzz in our Slack channel about what was going on there, and so I was like super curious, and I looked at the chats later on, and understood the story, and actually the spirit of the entire interaction changed from that moment on. In the event, but I can tell you one of the most profound interactions that I witnessed, two actually. One was the Association of Psychiatrists, and this was a session on climate change. And the speakers, for starters, very passionate. One of them was recording actually from her bathroom because it was the best lighting. So the way that she had her computer, it was like when she was talking, like she just wanted to shake you on the other side. But the chat interaction that happened around it was so deep. Like they were sharing very personal stories of experiences with patients who were, or with clients. Oh, I don't know what the term is, but who were, going through severe mental health challenges around kind of these feelings of despair. And the chat interaction that emerged out of that, first of all, was like this rallying cry, the community interaction. People were like, oh, there's this meeting that's happening at this time. We should come and lobby and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, my team, this was pre-COVID, we were there together. We all just, sat there kind of realizing the weight and the significance of the interaction that had just happened. Another example, and it comes to mind because we keep talking about sponsorship, and really there's this big there. This is a very meaningful way to interact with the community. But there was an event that was there were members, and then students were invited. There was a student population, and one of the sponsorship packages was for a certain fee you could make it free for all students. So that was actually the first one that went actually, and by a organization that had never sponsored before. So they were present in the event, and in the chat, there was this specific student group. Actually, their username was the name of the school. And so it was just clear based on, what they were saying, that there were like 3 or 4 of them hunched around a computer together. And over time, and so they would like ask questions, and there were moments where there were meaningful interactions between that school and the top thought leader in the industry. And you just think about like how often are you going to have that circumstance, right? But as the interaction kept going, they changed their username actually, not changed their username, but they started to self-identify in the chat. Like you could tell that the group that was sitting there, they were starting to have divergent opinions, and you can just imagine them like, how are we going to handle this? So they started naming them, Sarah says this, Erica says this in the chat. And it struck me also that, the younger population is this is a medium that's also very comfortable for them, and the notion of the active engagement of problem solving has been baked into the DNA, in my opinion. So this is also a really incredible opportunity to engage your younger generation members.
Well, thanks, Arianna and Alan and Garth. This was some great information that you guys shared today, and was really exciting. I think we could probably sit online all day and talk to you guys. But I think we'll wrap it up for today. Appreciate your time, and for everybody who's attended. And as we said, we will follow up via email with the recording and your CAE certificate, and hope to see you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.